All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here with me today. My goal is at the end of this time together, you will have a better understanding about compliance, maybe be less confused about your individual requirements, and maybe you've got some old policies that are stuck in a drawer somewhere that you might pull out, brush off, and review and view as a little more important. So it looks like everybody has joined that's supposed to. So we'll get started. If you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat section and I will get to them as I can before we move on the slides, or I will have a section at the end for answering any questions you may have. So who am I and why do you care? I started my IT career in 1992. I started working for a small CPA firm down in Encino. There were about 5 people in the office, but they also provided IT support to other CPAs and clients that they have that they valued. And that was my job. I had a great experience, my first experience in supporting many different businesses, different types, different kinds, and different areas. After a couple years of that, it really wasn't going anywhere. So I got hired on by a company called JF Shea Corporate down in Walnut, California. You'll know one of their entities, Shea Homes, down in Napomo, Trilogy. That was one of 8 different entities that Shea's had at that point. After a while, I worked my way up to being one of 2 network engineers that was responsible for supporting and securing an organization of over 1,600 users or computers, 37 offices in 8 states. This experience gave me an education and experience that it'd be hard to come by up here on the Central Coast. I had all the money, all the business, all the email, everything that a business had. I had to manage and maintain it. I was also responsible for assisting the other IT staff in supporting their client base. Right at the end of my career with JF Shea, the Melissa virus hit, and that tore through the nation because computers weren't patched. And I saw or felt that there was a better way for small businesses to protect themselves. So I started my own company in 1999 in Pasadena. We met the needs of CPAs and attorneys. I used the skill set and the application and the rules that I found and learned at Shea and applied them to the small businesses, and it was successful. We moved up here to the Central Coast in 2002, and since then the risks have increased and my mission has grown to include supporting thousands of people in a half a dozen states. I stand alongside attorneys, accountants, doctors, and business owners, people like you, to help them understand the risks to their organization and their businesses, working closely with them to develop and execute a plan to protect their people and their assets. So enough about me. What is compliance? This is why we're here. Compliance refers to adhering to laws, regulation, guidelines, and specifications relevant to a business process. It's critical for maintaining legal standing, avoiding penalties, and building trust with stakeholders and clients. In talking with my clients and other business owners on the Central Coast, I understand, realize that compliance isn't something most people want to hear about or deal with. They just don't think it's important or they need to do it. But they do want to make sure that their business and their clients' information is protected. All right. Another word for compliance is governance. Compliance is following the rules of outside sources, the government, industry mandates. But governance is ensuring that your staff follows the internal processes and structures which your organization operates on and how you make decisions. So whether you're meeting external mandates or following internal processes, compliance or governance is essentially about documenting the information security measurements that are already in place. It ensures that you and your staff have a base to follow to stay well informed and that they understand and can adhere to your policies. Compliance doesn't have to be complex to be successful. So compliance and governance is essential to avoid legal penalties, fines, and regulatory actions. Financial protection in preventing financial losses and denial of insurance coverage or premium increases. Compliance and policies and procedures leads to operational efficiency in streamlining the process and improving risk management. The loss of customer trust and damage to a company's reputation can have long-lasting effects, potentially leading to a loss of business and difficulty in acquiring new customers. This damage can be really hard to recover from, especially with a business that heavily relies on customer trust. Ethical responsibilities, right? Doctors, CPAs, and some others have licenses, and they are mandated to protect their patients or clients' information. And if they don't do that, they could eventually lose their license to practice. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to follow up and implement compliance. Common challenges in compliance include staying up to date with regulatory changes. We know our government changes all the time. Managing compliance across different regions or different types of businesses, maybe in one business with processing credit cards and cyber insurance. How do you mandate and follow all of that? Ensuring that all employees are informed and trained on your policies or outside policies, and setting up an effective compliance program. These challenges all require continuous effort and resources. There are many other reasons that I hear that business owners don't want to implement compliance. Some of them at the top of the list are costs concerns. They think it's going to take too much money or time to put it together. Lack of awareness of how important it is to be compliant. Low risk. They don't think it's going to happen to them, a data breach, so they wouldn't need to worry about it. Many, many more. A lot of us may remember the WannaCry ransomware attack back in 2017. It was a worldwide attack. It targeted computers running the Windows operating system, not the Macs, but the Windows. That attack encrypted the data on the hard drives, and they demanded ransom payments before you could access your data again. What most people don't know is the WannaCry attack spread using something called Eternal Blue. Eternal Blue is an exploit that was developed by our US National Security Agency. I don't know why they had it, but they did. Eternal Blue was stolen from the government about a month before the WannaCry virus was launched. A couple days after Eternal Blue was stolen, Microsoft created and released security patches to prevent infection. Those computers that were patched were not affected, but the hundreds of thousands of computers in the US that were not patched got infected. This is a real life event. These kinds of attacks continue to happen, and they happen every day. Well, we can't avoid it. We can sure prepare for it and limit the destruction that this could have simply by performing routine maintenance on computers. 91% of all data breaches are a result of somebody in an organization opening up an infected email. It's imperative that we set up training for all of our staff so they are aware of data breaches, ransomware attacks, phishing emails, and other cybersecurity downfalls and pitfalls that they could become victims of. 48% of SMBs did not purchase cyber insurance until after a breach, by then it's too late, right? Insurance premiums would double if they could even get insurance. 64% of SMB, small medium businesses, are not aware that cyber insurance is available to them. And the survival rate of businesses after a data breach can vary widely depending on factors such as the size of business, the severity of the breach, the industry, and the effectiveness of the response plan. However, several studies and reports provide insights into the significant impact data breaches can have on businesses, particularly small and medium-sized businesses. 60% go out of business within 6 months of having a data breach. All it takes is updating your computers, folks, and creating some basic policies that will keep you out of this statistic. According to the Ponemon Institute, they released a data breach report back in 2023. The average cost of a stolen record in the US is approximately $164. But given that we are in California, higher costs due to stringent data protection regulations and the high cost of living, that average could be considerably higher. But $167 per record. A record isn't just anything about one person. If you are a CPA and you have a person's name, physical address, email address, social security number, date of birth, those are all records. So you may have 10, 12, 50 different records lost times 167. It can add up really quick. So compliance standards, we call these standards. FTC safeguards. It's the Federal Trade Commission, how they mandate security and compliance for financial institutions. PCI compliance is for credit cards. We all know or have heard of HIPAA for medical institutions. We have state requirements. Cyber insurance isn't a law, but it is still a compliance standard. And the NIST we will get into in a few minutes. So the Federal Trade Commission updated their safeguards rule in 21 and 22, and they redefined what a financial institution is. Basically, it boils down to any business providing business to a person, not business to business, where your business deals with a person's personal information and personal finance information, whether this is done on paper or electronic form. So you are, if that's you, you are a financial institution. I think of a financial institution as a bank, credit union, those kinds of businesses. But with the way the Federal Trade Commission has defined it, it is now auto dealers, CPAs, financial advisors that don't have to follow the SEC guidelines, check cashers, real estate agents, brokers, escrow, any type of company that deals with real estate transactions, and a lot of different companies that you wouldn't consider to be a financial institution. I'm talking about this because when this was released, it was really the only federal law that had teeth in it. Right? The FTC has hired many different investigators to proactively go out and inspect businesses that are supposed to be compliant. If they're not, they're being fined and worse. Also, the US does not have a national cybersecurity plan yet. Other countries do. The Congress is working on that. And it's rumored that this FTC safeguards rule is going to be kind of similar in national safeguards. So what does a reasonable information security program look like? One, you have to designate a qualified individual to implement and supervise your company's information security program. You don't have to hire an IT expert, somebody like me or your current IT person. You don't have to hire somebody with a degree. It could be somebody that just has relevant experience with your type of business in securing that environment. That person has to hire or conduct a risk assessment. That risk assessment is how the business feels or has documented how information security has been implemented. We will also run a cybersecurity assessment or scans on the computers to see how protected they actually are. The difference between that risk assessment and a scan is called the gap. Right? So we have to design and implement safeguards to control the risks identified or those gaps. Once we implement them, we have to monitor and test the effectiveness of our safeguards program. We have to train our staff to make sure they know what to do, how to use technology, how not to, and what to do and what are the right steps after a data breach. You also have to monitor your service providers to make sure they do the right thing. If you have an IT person, do they have a proper information security program in their office? Right? Us IT folks, we usually have access to all of your computers. If our system gets hacked, guess what? It's all yours, right? So you are obligated to make sure they and anybody else that could come in contact with your network has the right program. You have to keep your information security program current. Without it, no reason to start. You have to create a written incident response plan so that it's documented of what is going to happen, what you have, where you're going to go. And lastly, they require that your qualified person implementing your program reports annually to the board or your management team, the ownership, whatever that may look like for your business, every year. And the FTC states what that report is supposed to look like. And that information has to be kept for a long time. PCI compliance. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry. This is not a law, but a standard founded by credit brands like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. And there are several misconceptions around PCI compliance. One of them is PCI compliance is optional, but in reality, if your business accepts, process, stores, or transmit credit card information or handles that data, you must comply with PCI requirements, regardless of your company size or the number of transactions you process every year. Another misconception is outsourcing makes you automatically compliant. In reality, if you are outsourcing your payment processing, credit card processing to a third party, such as going through QuickBooks or integrating a third party merchant service through your website so your clients can purchase services, you probably sign an agreement to process credit cards through that merchant. And there's probably fine print that says you're agreeing to implement PCI compliance on your network. And if you don't, you could have a problem. Many of us have to do an annual self-assessment to answer questions on what we're doing for security. If you have to do that, it's almost certain that your network needs to be PCI compliant. Any questions so far, folks? All right, we'll keep going. HIPAA compliance. This is obviously for doctors. All right, we've got a privacy rule, a security rule, breach notification rule, omnibus rule. They're meant to secure patient information in different ways and how you have to notify people if it happens. Failure to comply with HIPAA can result in significant fines, penalties, legal action, potential jail time, making it essential for businesses or healthcare environments and their partners to prioritize maintaining HIPAA compliance. Anybody that works within your business, IT partners, copier companies, anybody that could come in contact with your patient's records, they have to sign a business associate agreement, which essentially says they agree to implement HIPAA security within their program, in their network environment. California laws. We live in the most restricted state in the nation, and that's no surprise, right? We have a California data breach notification law. And that applies to everybody on this call, everybody doing business in the state. California Privacy Rights Act, that applies to all of us again. California Consumer Privacy Act. This only applies to companies that earn $25 million or more a year and or sells personal information. So probably nobody on this call today. California Online Privacy Protection Act, that applies to all of us. And the California Confidentiality of Medical Information Act. It's kind of written for health organizations, but it also might apply to every one of us. If we have an employee that has a medical condition, say seizures, right? We may have that documented, and we may have a list of people to call, how to treat that person. Or we may have a workman's comp claim and we get a PDF back from the doctor or the urgent care, and we save that. If these types of documents are involved in a data breach, that is considered medical information, and we have to abide by that law. So depending on the type of business you are in California, you may have 2 or 3 of these that you need to abide by. Cyber insurance, we talked about that most businesses don't realize it's there and don't realize its importance. In today's world, having a cyber liability insurance policy is almost a must. It's rumored that there are new laws going through Congress that is going to mandate cyber insurance for every business in our nation. And that's going to come out this year or next, is what I'm being told. Right. But liability policy, cyber insurance provides financial protection for financial losses as well as legal and regulatory expenses. Incident response support. Your insurance carrier might pay for me or some other IT person to come in and mitigate and fix the damage. Business continuity. If you have business interruption and you lose income, your plan might help cover some of that. The policy often also includes coverage for public relations efforts to manage and mitigate damage to the organization's reputation. Bad thing. Okay, so there are a lot of other benefits of having a cyber liability policy. But be careful. If you have a good cyber liability policy that might pay out $1 million or more, chances are you're going to have to fill out an application that's asking you, do you have certain securities in place? If you answer that falsely and down the road you do have a breach and you file a claim, they are going to investigate. And if you can't prove you've done what you said you would, your insurance claim is likely going to be not denied, and you could be sued for breach of contract for lying on the application. So if you do get insurance, please make sure you do it right and have your IT person help you complete that application. Okay, National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST for short. It's not a law. It's a non-regulatory federal agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce. NIST has come out with different frameworks, they call it, for different types of businesses with recommendations on how to secure your network and your information. NIST cybersecurity is kind of a jack of all trades for most businesses. They have different scopes for identifying risk in a business, to protect a network by implementing safeguards, detect cybersecurity events, respond to those events, and recover from them. Right? These are tried and true, tested frameworks that will protect your business. If you have a data breach, you may very well go to court. Whether it's you or your IT person is going to talk to the judge, and they're going to ask how you protected your network. There are two ways you can respond. One is, we did the best we knew how, which may not take you very far. Or you can say that we implemented and followed the NIST cybersecurity framework or any of the other frameworks. Here are the reports, and here is the evidence that it's been implemented and followed. Obviously, the second option is going to hold a lot of weight in court. Furthermore, the federal government and a couple, maybe 8 states have signed into law what they are calling safe harbor laws. The safe harbor law says that if you can prove you've implemented NIST for up to 12 months prior to the breach, there will be absolutely no fines or penalties. If you're a HIPAA medical organization, this is huge. All right. The other organizations, not yet here in California. They would kind of cover the consequences of non-compliance. Actually, that was with the cyber insurance at what it would pay for. But the risks of a data breach can be significant, multifaceted, affecting individuals, organizations, and even broader structures. Such losses could be financial loss, direct loss, or consequences because of expenses related to investigating the breach, notifying the affected party, legal fees, and regulatory fines. There are indirect costs, long-term financial impacts such as loss of business and increased insurance premiums or loss of insurance. Reputation damages, right? Your clients are going to lose trust in you, in your business. They may go elsewhere. The negative publicity may make it harder for you to get clients in the future. Compliance violations, lawsuits, class action lawsuits from your clients and your employees and your staff. Disruption to your network. If you have a ransomware attack, your network might be down for a day, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how deep it goes. Increased cyber threats. There are some companies that just do a quick fix when they have a ransomware attack. But then a month or 2 or 3 down the road, they get another ransomware attack. Why? Because they didn't do a good job cleaning it up. So a simple example of some math, if you were involved in a simple data breach. All right. California Privacy Act can impose penalties of $2,500 per unintentional violation or $7,500 per intentional violation. And an unintentional is something that you weren't aware of or couldn't help. But intentional, if your IT person tells you you need to do something and the court finds out about it, that could be deemed an intentional violation. I'm not an attorney, so I really can't advise on that, right? But if we go to the minimum, $2,500 per violation times what? You have 200 clients in your database? It's $500,000. You'll also be forced to pay for credit monitoring for all of those people at about $40 a month. That's another $100,000. Okay, we're not including the incident response and mitigation, attorney's fees, and being down a week or more. Right? This could easily reach $1 million, $1.5 million. Supply chain attacks. Most businesses only think about their security and what they need to take care of. But what companies, what softwares, what application, what services are provided by outside companies that your business relies on? Change, which is a subsidiary of United Healthcare, was hacked in 24. February of 24, recently. They were hit with a ransomware attack. Change Healthcare provided the following information. Their payment services were down, revenue cycle management was down, claims processing and client appeals management was down. This company processed 15 billion claims a year. That's a lot, right? But towards the end of February, it was leaked or published that they cleaned up the security breach. But within a couple months, like April, they got double ransomed. They got hacked again. Probably because it wasn't cleaned up properly the first time. So why was this a supply chain attack? Physicians in hospitals had problems with billing. They couldn't manage and issue prescriptions and procedures for their patients. Pharmacies couldn't get the information to fill prescriptions. And the individual patients couldn't get their prescriptions and couldn't get procedures they needed. Obviously, some of the procedures were minimal, but others were very serious and they had to have them. Right? This 1 week link affected millions of people. Another one just this month, CDK Global. It's a software vendor, a cloud vendor that dealerships use, a lot of dealerships. They got a cybersecurity attack and had to shut down their entire system. As of earlier this week, they were still down. Right? Dealerships could not sell cars. They couldn't register cars with the DMV. They couldn't do service because they didn't have access to who needed what. Right? Are you and your company prepared for one of your vendors to have an attack? Attorneys on the call might be using Clio. The doctors have their own EHR system. I have my own system. If those systems go down and you can't access them for a week or longer, what are you going to do? Have you thought about that? Have you documented it so you and your staff know what to do when that happens? So we've covered the different ways a cybersecurity attack or breach can happen, directly and indirectly, how it affects your business. So what can you do with that risk? You got three choices. You can reduce the risk by implementing a reasonable information security program or a complete incident information security program. You can do nothing and accept the risk if something happens, or you can transfer that risk by purchasing a good cyber liability insurance policy. I say good because some people have a small insurance policy of 100, 300,000, but that's not going to pay. The average cybersecurity breach is going to cost an average small business on the Central Coast $1 to $1.5 million. Now, if you get that liability policy, they're going to send you back to, number one, reduce it to protect their investment in your company. Right? They're tired of paying claims. So you might as well spend the time to reduce it yourself first. So where do we start? Where is your company's data? Where's it stored? On your server? In the cloud? In Dropbox? OneDrive? SharePoint? So many endless places that it could be. How is that data accessed? Where is it accessed? How is it secured? And once we know that, then we conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify their vulnerabilities. We also run an assessment on the computers themselves. The difference between the risk assessment, where it shows what you think is secured and how it's secured, compared to how it's actually implemented, are the gaps. So we make a plan, prioritize those risks, and to start implementing them. Whether we choose the big items first or we choose a bunch of little ones, we need to make a plan. Then we can attack them as we have the budget to do so. All right. Once we get those implemented, we have to regularly review them to make sure they are working like we planned. We have to perform internal audits on a regular basis to test our effectiveness. Then we have to make adjustments as needed. Policies and procedures. These are documents that tell our company and our staff in clear written policies, establishing procedures for compliance, communicating them to employees, and regularly reviewing and updating them to reflect changes in regulations or business processes. Some of the big items in policies are an acceptable use policy. This tells your staff, your management team, how they can use company provided technology. May also say what they can't do. Do you allow your employees to bring their own computers or phones to work in the office, to work remotely, to access email anywhere? Are those devices secure? If so, how should they be secured? Do you provide cybersecurity awareness training? That goes back to 91% of malware ransomware attacks happen by somebody clicking on an email. A clean desk policy. Have you told your staff that they can't leave documents out or screens open that contain personal information? When they're done, they close the file, lock the computer. If it's paper files, put them in a locked filing cabinet. An incident response plan. Do you have a document on what you're going to do if a or all your computers are held ransom? Do you know, does your staff know who to call? Do you call an attorney? Do you call an IT person? Do the employees call you directly and then you call IT? What are you going to do? Statistics show that if a company has an incident response plan, even if it isn't tested and validated, chances of recovering from a ransomware attack is 80%. But without that, the chances are less than 20. I don't know about you, but I want to be on that 80%. Password management. How are you going to manage passwords? You're going to put them in Google Chrome? Or are you going to put them in a password saver? Are they going to be complex? Do they have to rotate? Do they expire? Is it clear to your staff how to manage those passwords? Remote access. If you're going to get remote access or be given remote access, what's the policy? What's the procedure? How do you do it? And security incident reporting. What do you do, right? Who do you report to? We looked at earlier, you've got 4 or 5 laws just in California that you may have to abide by. Do you know the reporting times that you have, the deadlines that you have to meet? Each of them have separate individual forms that have to be submitted in different times. If that's not documented, you're not going to be able to figure it out during the emergency. So once we have that risk assessment, we have to implement some controls. Those are administrative, technical, and physical controls. Administrative is your documents and your policies, maybe a disciplinary policy. Technical controls, content filtering, blocking suspicious links, not allowing people to move files to a thumb drive that isn't approved. Antivirus that does a really good job, not some basic residential type software. Something that somebody is monitoring 24/7, 365 to make sure everything is working properly. Do you have software that controls what applications can or cannot be installed on the computers? Those are all technical tools. Physical would be locking doors, securing computers and laptops to desks so nobody can walk off with them, and other things like that. To navigate the compliance maze effectively, you have to stay informed about regulatory changes, foster a culture of compliance within your organization, provide regular training and education for your employees, and work closely with legal and compliance experts. You can educate your staff on your information security programs so they understand. You can regularly communicate with your team about staying vigilant and protecting your network. Reports and evidence can be gathered on a regular basis to ensure your information security program is being implemented and followed. Okay. IT security, cybersecurity, and compliance isn't a one and done. It's a journey. We have to review, test, change, implement new things to stay in time with the thieves and the hackers. Every time they find a security vulnerability, we have to patch it or get software to fix it. You have to take care of yourself by vetting or checking the security of your vendors. We talked about that a little earlier. This is actually a requirement by PCI, HIPAA, FTC safeguards. Something that they need to do. Vendor management. If you're putting your data in places like Microsoft Office 365, Google, QuickBooks, we don't have much control of what they do, but it is published how they secure things, their certifications. We need to treat other vendors, places that we trust with our HR, payroll, other pertinent information, that they have probably a SOC 2 certification. All that says is that vendor has paid for somebody to verify that their network or environment is secure. You have to do that, folks. Okay, a written information security program. This is starting to be asked for by IRS for CPAs to renew their certification and other systems like that. Essentially, it is just a documentation of your network at a given point in time. Just so we don't run out of time here, I don't want to go over these, but there are specific things that need to be covered or in your written information security program. Okay, a written information security program provides a structured approach to proactively protecting sensitive information, helps ensure compliance with applicable data protection laws and regulations, risk management, helps employee be aware of what their responsibilities are, what the expectations are. All right. If you need more information on that, please feel free to give me a call or contact me anyway. A story about doing this yourself. There has recently, within the last couple of months, been a medical healthcare company in the Midwest realized that their policies and compliance wasn't where it should be. They needed to update to the newer HIPAA standards, so they hired a specialized lawyer. They did all the necessary things. They reviewed policies, identified their security gaps, drafted new policies, and they did all the right things. They covered all their bases, their patient privacy, data security, delivered the processes to their executive team. Covered all the necessary points, and the language seemed to be good. But what's missing, folks? They did not train and educate their staff. 6 months after this, they were breached. And that ended up costing them $3.4 million by the time it was said and done. There were only 3 doctors in this practice. So it wasn't a big practice. I would believe that a business here on the Central Coast that had to pay $3.5 million, that would be a rough time. So incidents do happen, breaches happen. Okay. Is your company ready to act? Whether you want to follow the compliance mandates by the laws, by the regulatory bodies, or you just want to implement some basic policies internally and make sure your staff follows them. Compliance really is important. So that's the material that I have today. I hope that was very educational for you. If you have any concerns or you want to talk about it or have a third party audit to make sure that your IT person is doing what you think they're doing, you can take a picture of that QR code or you can go to our website, proitzone.com, go to the contact us tab and click the button to schedule a call. It looks like nobody has any questions. So thank you much for attending today and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.